Hello, beautiful people. In this video, we will be reviewing absolute values, specifically solving equations of absolute values. I will be referring to our steps. These are our steps. I'm just going to read through them really quickly. Step 1, you are to isolate the absolute value expression. Step 2 is to create two separate equations. Step 3 is to solve those two equations. And step 4, check for extraneous solutions. Now, for step number 1, note, if you get the absolute value by itself and it equals a negative number, your answer has no solution because an absolute value, this, will never equal a negative number if it's by itself. You can have no solution, multiple solutions, or you can have one solution. So there's 3 different types of answers you can get when solving absolute value equations. Let's go ahead and jump into our example number 1. Example number 1, step number 1 is to isolate the absolute value, meaning I need nothing but the absolute value on one side. I call this a bubble. Anything outside the bubble on this side? No, there's nothing outside the bubble. There's a 13, but it's on the opposite side of the equation, therefore it doesn't really count. Since there is nothing there, we're going to do this twice. So I'm going to rewrite x plus 4 is equal to 13. And I'm going to write x plus 4 is equal to, and I'm going to put 13 in parentheses and write a negative. You don't have to do it when it's one number, but as you'll see in a different example, if it's not one number, if it's something with a variable, you have to distribute that negative, and that's really, really where kiddos create a hiccup. It's not an error, it's a hiccup. Hiccups we can fix, we can stop hiccups. All right, let's go ahead and solve this. I'm going to subtract 4. Here's my dotted line. Subtract 4 both sides. What do we have? 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So I have 9 here. Bring down my x. So one possible solution is x being 9. Now, is that our answer? Maybe. We have to figure out if it will actually work. Distribute that negative if you have more than one term. If not, it just becomes negative itself. I'm going to subtract 4 both sides. I have a negative and more negatives. That means I have a 4, 5, 6, 7, negative 17 here. And I have an x bring down. So our secondary possible answer is negative 17. Is that our answer? Maybe. We don't know yet. So in order to check if it's our answer, we're going to come back here to our original equation. And we're going to take our original equation and substitute in 9, check what that is equal to, and then we're going to substitute in negative 17 and see what that equals to. If it equals to 13, then the value that we substituted in, our x value, is correct. If it doesn't equal to this side here, if the two sides are not equal, therefore you don't have a solution for that particular x value. Okay. 9 plus 4, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yes, so this one does work. 17 plus 4, well, we need to back up a little bit because we have 17 negatives, 4 positives. So that means I have a negative 13. Absolute value of negative 13 is a positive 13. Do we have positive 13? Yes. So both work. So how many solutions do you have? You have 2 solutions. What are they? X is equal to 9 and x is equal to negative 17. Move on to example number 2. Example number 2. Step number 1 is to isolate the absolute value. Here's our bubble. Here's our absolute value. Notice that this right here, this positive 2, is not inside the bubble. It is outside the bubble. It's outside of the function. It's outside of the absolute value. So I'm going to remove it by subtracting 2 both sides, just like you would if you were solving a standard basic equation. So now I have absolute value of v over 2. And here I have 7 take away 2, which is 5. Now we split this up. Since v divided by 2 is on its own, we have isolated our absolute value. So now we're going to separate this out. I have v over 2 is equal to 5. And I have v over 2 is equal to negative 5. Again, I'm just showing you to put the negative in a parenthesis. If it's just a number, it will just be a negative number. However, we will see an example where you're going to have to distribute. So let's go ahead and continue solving. I have v divided by 2, so I'm going to multiply by 2 both sides. So my 2's go away. V is equal to 10. It could be equal to 10. Is it equal to 10? Maybe. We don't know. Same thing. I'm going to multiply by 2, but now I have a negative. So v is equal to negative 10. Are these our answers? I don't know. Let's check. Going to do our check here. So I have absolute value of v over 2 plus 2 equals 7. You want to start with the original. Then you can do it twice like this if you wish. And I'm going to plug in positive 10. Absolute value plus 2 equals 7. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Absolute value of a positive number is positive, so I have 5 plus 2. Is 5 plus 2 equal to 7? Yes. So therefore, positive 10 is one of our solutions. Now let's check if we have more. So I'm going to plug in negative 10 for the value of v. Absolute value plus 2 is equal to 7. Negative 10 divided by 2 is a negative 5. Absolute value plus 2 equals 7. Absolute value of negative 5 is a positive 5. Plus 2 is perhaps equal to 7. Again, these are all questions because we don't know if it actually works. 5 plus 2 is 7. 7 is equal to 7. So therefore, our secondary answer of negative 10 is also a solution. Jumping into more. Alrighty, same thing, isolate the absolute value. So here's our absolute value. Notice that we have two things attached to it. I have this positive 2 and I have this 5. Now 5 is attached to this absolute value. Think of it as parentheses. It's attached by multiplication. So what we really have here is 5 times the absolute value of 2 minus 2r plus 2. Now whenever you are isolating a variable, or in this case our absolute value, you want to start with adding, subtracting first. You want to remove that first before you remove any multiplication, division, unless you have fractions. So I'm going to change my marker, subtract 2 both sides. So I have 40 on this side. On this side I still have 5 times my absolute value, which is 2 minus 2r. Now I'm going to divide by 5, keeping the 2 minus 2r in the absolute value. I'm going to bring down my little dotted line there to separate my equation. And I'm going to divide by 5 here as well. So I'm left over with the absolute value of 2 minus 2r, which is equal to 40 divided by 5, which is 8. Now, my absolute value has been isolated. Step number 2 is to create two separate equations. Now, I am doing a mental check in my brain here once it is isolated, because if we potentially would get a negative answer here, for example, the absolute value of 2 minus 2r is equal to a negative 8, like that would be no solution. Since this is a positive number, we can continue to step number 2. I'm going to separate this out, so I have 2 minus 2r is equal to positive 8, and I have 2 minus 2r is equal to negative 8. Moving on, I am going to subtract 2 from both sides. Don't mess with this 2 attached to r yet. You want to get rid of everything attached to this first. So we want to undo 2. So we have 6 is equal to negative 2r. I'm going to divide by negative 2 both sides. R is equal to a negative 3, maybe. And then here, same thing, I'm going to subtract 2 both sides, but I have 8 being negative now. So I have a negative 10. Bring down the negative 2r, divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2. R is potentially equal to a positive 5. All right, let's go ahead and do our checks. Looking back at our original equation, and our original is 5 times the absolute value of 2 minus 2r plus 2 is equal to 42. I'm going to plug in my negative 3 first. So I have 5 times 2 minus 2 parenthesis negative 3. Again, whenever you're substituting values, try to use parentheses as much as you can. So that way you don't accidentally think you're adding or subtracting. Let me shift this up. Absolute value, treat that first. So I have a multiplication, so 3 times 2 is 6. 6 negative and negative is a positive, so I have 2 plus 6 here now, plus 2 equal 42. 6 plus 2 is 6, 7, 8. Just copy down the rest. 5, oh, before I even do that, the absolute value of 8 is 8 because it is already positive. It does help me to put a little dot here for my multiplication. 5 times 8 is 40. 40 plus 2 is in fact 42. And again, all of these were question marks because we didn't know if it was actually 42. And in this case, it is 42, so therefore R is in fact negative 3. Let's do that one more time. Now we're plugging in a positive 5, so 2 minus 2 times a positive 5 in absolute value, and then outside is the plus 2, perhaps is equal to 42. We will check. Parentheses come first, which is our absolute value. So we have 5 times 2 is 10. 2 minus 10 is what we have inside our absolute value. So 5 times, I have a negative 8 here, plus 2. Negative 8 absolute value is a positive 8. 5 times 8 is 40, plus 2. Yes, in fact, we get 42. So both of these are our answers. All right, beautiful people, I'm going to go ahead and do one more. I'm not going to finish this example. You can do that one on your own. But I wanted to show you how you would treat something that with a negative. For example, let me change my marker here. That one doesn't really work. So if I have the absolute value of 2x plus 5 equal to 3x plus 4. Now, if you notice this bubble here, this absolute value is already isolated. There's nothing outside here. There's nothing outside here. So what we would do, we would then separate these out into two different equations. So the first equation would be our positive. And this is where I wanted to show you the negative. So I have 2x plus 5, and then you have to put all of this in parentheses, 3x plus 4, and make all of that side negative. You're not just making 3x negative, you're not just making 4 negative, you're actually distributing that negative inside our parentheses. So you would take this negative, multiply it by the first term, take this negative, multiply it by the second term, and however many terms you have. So in reality here, we have negative 3x minus 4. Now, it just so happened that both of these became negative. Sometimes you'll have a negative and a positive. You're just multiplying that negative on the inside. Then you're going to bring down the 2x plus 5 and then continue solving. To save time, I will not be solving this equation. However, I will give you that we have one solution, and that is x is equal to 7. Double check and make sure you're able to get that answer. As always, thank you so much for watching my videos, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!